of the slamming to one.
I don't care about your pathetic story, hero. This is a business, not a veterans hospital.
Well,
your wheelchair's blocking the exit. Get out, now!
Restaurant manager, kicked out disabled veteran. Then biker gang at next table stood up. Your wheelchair is blocking fire exits. Out, now. Manager Ryan Torres pointed at Marine veteran Mike Thunder Rodriguez, his service dog Rex beside him. Torres had no idea the Mongols motorcycle club at table 7 had just put down their beers and recognized the Purple Heart license plate holder they'd served alongside in Iraq. Former Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, 35, lost both legs to Taliban IED while carrying wounded Marines to safety. Red Rock Steakhouse was his first dinner out since his wife's funeral. Without Rex, panic attacks would destroy him completely. Road Captain Steele Martinez stood from his table recognizing Mike's 2nd Marines patch across the crowded restaurant. 8 Mongols bikers had ridden together for Sunday dinner for 6 years. Today, they'd ride for justice. Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez served 3 tours in Iraq, with the 2nd Marines earning Silver Star and Purple Heart through actions that saved 14 Marines but cost him both legs and his faith in civilian compassion. The IED blast in Ramadi came during his final patrol, a massive explosion that Mike absorbed while shielding wounded Marines from secondary blasts. Rex, his German Shepherd service dog, was trained specifically for Mike's PTSD mobility assistance and medical alert capabilities. The dog detected panic attacks, provided balance support during transfers, and created psychological security that allowed Mike to function in civilian environments that felt more hostile than combat zones. His wife Sarah's death from cancer 6 months ago had isolated him completely. This dinner at Red Rock represented his first attempt at public dining since her funeral, a therapeutic goal his VA counselor had set to combat suicidal depression that had claimed 3 Marines from his unit already this year. Rex wasn't just assistance. He was Mike's lifeline to remaining alive when civilian indifference made him question why he'd survived when better Marines had died protecting ungrateful Americans who seemed to hate the veterans who'd bled for their freedom. Ryan Torres managed Red Rock Steakhouse with corporate efficiency that prioritized profit margins over human dignity, viewing disabled customers as operational complications that reduced table turnover and deterred affluent clientele seeking refined dining experiences. His business degree emphasized customer demographics and revenue optimization without acknowledging federal disability accommodation laws that he considered bureaucratic obstacles to profitable restaurant operations. Torres had never served in the military, viewing veterans as damaged goods seeking special treatment rather than honored guests who'd sacrificed for American freedom. Service dogs represented health code violations in his limited understanding, despite federal protections that superseded local restaurant regulations completely. His management philosophy valued appearance over compliance, profits over people, and efficiency over constitutional protections that he'd never studied or respected. The Mongols Motorcycle Club's Phoenix chapter included 8 combat veterans representing Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam service whose brotherhood transcended traditional motorcycle club boundaries to include military loyalty that death couldn't diminish. Road Captain Martinez maintained contact with veteran networks across Arizona, creating support systems that responded to emergencies with military precision and absolute dedication to protecting brothers who'd served America overseas. Sir Rex is a certified service dog with proper federal documentation, Mike explained calmly, showing his VA service dog identification and medical letters, establishing Rex's essential role in his PTSD management and mobility assistance. Torres snatched the documents, examining them with theatrical skepticism designed to create public humiliation. "These papers mean nothing here. Your dog is shedding on paying customers' food, violating health codes. Rex is trained, certified, and legally protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act," Mike replied, his Marine discipline intact despite growing public embarrassment. "I don't care about your sob stories, hero. This is a business, not a VA hospital." Torres's voice carried across the crowded restaurant, drawing attention from other patrons who began recording the confrontation with phones. Rex sensed Mike's rising anxiety, positioning himself to provide stability. As Mike's PTSD symptoms began manifesting: rapid breathing, trembling hands, hypervigilance, scanning for exits that his combat conditioning demanded when facing hostile situations. "Look at that, the fake hero is having another fake breakdown with his fake service dog. This is exactly why we don't accommodate these people." The cruelty was calculated, designed to humiliate Mike into leaving without forcing Torres to understand disability law or veteran rights that conflicted with his profit-focused management style. Torres signaled his security guard, a college football player hired for intimidation rather than legal knowledge or veteran sensitivity. "Jason, escort our disabled hero and his pet to the parking lot. He's disrupting actual customers." Mike's hands gripped his wheelchair wheels while Rex remained alert and protective as strangers approached with obvious hostility. The crowded restaurant became a combat zone in Mike's PTSD-triggered mind. Multiple threats limited exits nowhere to maneuver his wheelchair effectively. "This is discrimination against a disabled veteran," called out Jessica Martinez from a nearby booth, her phone recording the entire encounter. "That's a legitimate service dog performing medical assistance." Other patrons began voicing support, creating tension where Torres realized his actions were being documented by dozens of witnesses whose viral social media posts could destroy the restaurant's reputation permanently. "Lady, mind your own business. This fake soldier brought a health hazard into my establishment, and I'm protecting real customers from his attention-seeking drama." The restaurant's Sunday crowd included several veterans who recognized Mike from VA appointments and community events, their anger building as they witnessed systematic discrimination against a decorated combat veteran whose visible disabilities proved his sacrifice. Mike closed his eyes and found the center that had carried him through IED explosions and firefights in urban Iraq, where death waited around every corner. When he opened them, his voice carried the steady authority of a non-commissioned officer who'd led Marines through hell. "Manager Torres, I've presented proper federal documentation. Rex performs medical tasks, preventing psychological crisis. Federal law protects our presence here." "Federal law doesn't override my property rights, wheelchair boy. You're trespassing, and I'm calling police to remove you." The slur hit Mike like incoming mortar rounds, each word designed to wound deeper than Taliban shrapnel ever had. His prosthetic legs trembled, not from mechanical malfunction, but from controlling rage that military discipline barely contained against civilian cruelty that exceeded enemy treatment. Rex performed alerting behavior, recognizing Mike's escalating PTSD symptoms and positioning himself to provide psychiatric assistance that could prevent complete psychological breakdown in the hostile environment. "Please, sir, I just want to eat dinner and honor my wife's memory. She loved this restaurant." "Then you should have thought about that before bringing your circus act into my establishment." The rumble of Harley-Davidson engines in the parking lot was already shaking Red Rock's windows as 8 combat veterans prepared to deliver justice with the same precision they'd shown eliminating threats overseas. Road Captain Steele Martinez stood from Table 7 with the controlled movements of someone who'd survived 3 tours in Vietnam and understood when military brotherhood faced civilian assault. At 6'9", his leather vest displayed Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Vietnam service ribbons that told stories of combat most patrons couldn't comprehend. Brothers, that's Mike Rodriguez from our VA support group, the Marine who carried 6 wounded men to safety in Ramadi before the IED took his legs. Martinez announced to 7 other Mongols whose combined combat experience spanned 5 decades of American military operations. The one who lost his wife to cancer last month asked Gunnar Williams, Iraq war veteran whose own PTSD made him recognize the symptoms Torres was exploiting for entertainment. Same Marine, and that manager just called him a fake hero with a fake service dog in front of a restaurant full of people recording his humiliation. The transformation around Table 7 was immediate and visceral. Peaceful Sunday dinner became tactical response as 8 combat veterans recognized a brother under systematic attack by civilian authority that had never faced real danger or understood military sacrifice. Iron Horse, call our network. Let Phoenix, Tucson, and Vegas chapters know we have a decorated Marine under assault at Red Rock, Martinez ordered. Within minutes, Mongols networks across Arizona were activated veteran bikers mounting Harley-Davidsons with the same urgency they'd shown responding to troops in contact calls in combat zones overseas. The 8 Mongols approached Mike's table with military bearing that made other patrons instinctively step aside their leather vests, creating a walking museum of American combat service, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, representing decades of defending America against enemies who'd shown more respect than Torres demonstrated. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Martinez addressed Mike with proper military courtesy. Mongols Motorcycle Club respectfully requests permission to assist with this civilian discrimination situation. Mike's eyes filled with recognition and relief as he saw the military patches and combat ribbons that identified fellow warriors who understood brotherhood bonds that death couldn't diminish. "Road Captain, I'd be grateful for any help you can provide." The bikers formed protective formation around Mike's wheelchair, Rex alert but calming as he recognized decreased threat levels. Torres and his security guard found themselves facing veterans whose combined combat experience exceeded anything they'd ever encountered or imagined. Manager Torres Martinez's command voice had once directed artillery strikes against NVA positions. "You're harassing a decorated Marine veteran whose service dog is federally protected. Explain your violation of civil rights law." Torres stammered suddenly, realizing he was surrounded by men whose military bearing suggested capabilities far beyond weekend motorcycle rides or civilian authority. He thought his business license provided against military personnel. "You bikers need to leave before I call the police," Torres threatened, but his voice cracked as he faced men who'd survived real combat and weren't intimidated by civilian authority or empty threats from someone who'd never faced actual danger. "Call them," Martinez replied calmly. Some officers are veterans who understand what Staff Sergeant Rodriguez sacrificed for your freedom to discriminate against heroes who protected your right to own businesses. More motorcycles arrived outside the rumble of Harley-Davidson engines, announcing additional Mongols members responding to the emergency call that had activated veteran networks across the Southwest with military communication efficiency. "This is getting out of hand," Torres muttered, realizing his discrimination was being witnessed by growing crowds of veterans whose loyalty to their disabled brother exceeded any concern about restaurant property rights or management authority. It got out of hand when you called a Silver Star recipient a fake hero. Williams replied, his own combat decorations visible on his vest. Mike Rodriguez carried wounded Marines through enemy fire that would have killed lesser men. The crowd of patrons, now understanding the full context of Torres's discrimination, began voicing support for Mike and condemnation of management actions that violated both federal law and basic human decency toward someone who'd sacrificed his legs defending American freedom. The intervention came from Red Rock's regional manager, Patricia Santos herself, an Army veteran who arrived just as the confrontation reached peak intensity. Her military bearing was immediately apparent to the Mongols, who recognized officer authority and leadership experience that transcended civilian corporate hierarchy. "What exactly is happening in my restaurant?" Santos demanded, surveying the tactical formation of 8 bikers protecting a disabled veteran, while her manager cowered behind security personnel whose intimidation tactics had failed against combat-tested military personnel. "Ma'am," Martinez responded with military courtesy that reflected decades of proper military protocol, "your manager is systematically discriminating against Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, a decorated Marine veteran with federally protected service dog, violating multiple civil rights statutes." Santos examined Mike's documentation with professional competence that revealed her own military background and understanding of federal disability accommodation requirements that her manager had violated through ignorance and malicious compliance failures. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I'm Regional Manager Patricia Santos, United States Army veteran. Your documentation is completely valid, and Rex is performing essential medical tasks that federal law protects absolutely." Torres went pale, realizing he faced his regional supervisor, who outranked him professionally while possessing military experience that made his discrimination against veterans personally offensive rather than merely illegal under federal statutes. "Ma'am, I was enforcing company health codes. You were violating federal civil rights law while humiliating a Marine who sacrificed his mobility, saving American lives in combat operations that protected your freedom to operate businesses in safety." Santos conducted immediate investigation that revealed Torres' pattern of discriminating against disabled customers, military veterans, and anyone requiring accommodation that he viewed as operational inconvenience rather than federal legal requirement and basic human decency. "Gentlemen," she addressed the Mongols with military respect that acknowledged their service records and protective intervention on behalf of their Marine brother. "Thank you for defending Staff Sergeant Rodriguez against discrimination that violates both federal law and corporate policy." The investigation uncovered Torres's systematic violations, refusing service to wheelchair users, rejecting service dogs despite proper documentation, and targeting veteran customers, whose disabilities required minimal accommodation that Torres viewed as profit-reducing complications. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, on behalf of Red Rock Corporate Management, I offer complete apology and lifetime dining privileges for you and any veteran organizations you represent, plus coverage for tonight's meal and any medical expenses related to psychological trauma caused by discrimination. Mike's voice was steady but emotional. Ma'am, I just wanted to honor my wife's memory by eating at her favorite restaurant without being treated like a burden or fake hero. The restaurant's patrons, many now understanding Torres's systematic cruelty toward a grieving veteran, began approaching Mike to express support and gratitude for his military service while condemning management discrimination that had violated both federal law and basic human dignity. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, civilian patron and VA psychologist, approached Mike's table. Staff Sergeant, what you experience constitutes institutional discrimination requiring federal civil rights investigation and documentation for legal proceedings. Santos implemented immediate policy changes that transformed Red Rock from discriminatory environment into veteran-friendly establishment, serving as model for accommodating disabled military personnel throughout the hospitality industry nationwide. Effective immediately, all Red Rock locations receive mandatory training on disability accommodation, veteran recognition, and service dog regulations. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's experience will never be repeated in establishments I supervise. The Mongols were offered permanent reserved seating for their weekly gatherings, creating visible veteran presence that deterred future discrimination while providing community support for disabled veterans facing similar challenges in civilian establishments. Red Rock corporate headquarters issued public statements condemning discrimination, establishing veteran hiring preferences, and creating partnerships with veteran service organizations that transformed company culture from profit-focused to service-oriented recognition of military sacrifice. Torres represented everything wrong with civilian attitudes toward veteran sacrifice. Santos explained to media outlets covering the story. Our veterans deserve respect, accommodation, and honor, not humiliation, from those they protected overseas. Federal civil rights attorneys opened investigations into Torres's systematic discrimination pattern, creating legal precedents that would prevent similar violations in hospitality establishments while ensuring accountability for managers who targeted disabled veterans. The viral videos showing Mongols bikers defending their disabled Marine brother became symbols of veteran brotherhood transcending service periods, inspiring communities nationwide to protect veterans facing discrimination in civilian settings where their sacrifice deserved recognition rather than ridicule. Within 24 hours, Ryan Torres was terminated from Red Rock corporate structure and blacklisted from hospitality management throughout Arizona. His systematic discrimination against disabled veterans became case study in corporate training programs, addressing civil rights violations and veteran accommodation requirements. Mike's story spread through veteran networks with military communication velocity, inspiring disabled veterans to report similar discrimination while encouraging veteran communities to protect their most vulnerable members from predatory business practices that violated federal law and basic human dignity. Red Rock Corporate implemented the Rodriguez Protocol, comprehensive accommodation procedures exceeding federal requirements, while creating genuinely welcoming environments for disabled veterans and their service animals throughout all corporate locations nationwide. The Mongols Motorcycle Club became Red Rock's permanent Sunday presence, creating visible veteran support that deterred discrimination while providing community networking for veterans facing civilian transition challenges and social integration difficulties. Most importantly, Mike's dignity was restored publicly with corporate apologies, lifetime privileges, and knowledge that his Marine Brotherhood would always defend him against civilian prejudice and institutional discrimination that violated everything they'd fought to protect overseas. The National Restaurant Association adopted Red Rock's accommodation protocols as industry standards. After federal oversight and media attention generated by Mike's case demonstrated that veteran-friendly policies increased revenue while serving communities that had protected American freedom through military sacrifice. Mike became federal consultant speaking to hospitality industry conferences about veteran accommodation and disability rights. His presentations reaching thousands of managers while creating cultural shifts that improved treatment of disabled veterans nationwide in commercial establishments. Congressional Veterans Affairs committees used Mike's experience to strengthen civil rights protections, creating enhanced penalties for systematic discrimination against disabled veterans in public accommodations, while ensuring rapid federal response when violations occurred. The Mongols Network established rapid response protocols in 12 states, creating veteran biker networks that responded to discrimination emergencies with tactical precision and legal support that protected vulnerable veterans from predatory civilian practices. Red Rock's quarterly profits increased 28% after implementing veteran-friendly policies, proving that inclusive business practices generated revenue while serving military communities whose sacrifice had protected American commercial freedom from foreign threats. Mike's Sunday Red Rock tradition became symbol of veteran inclusion, with Mongols meetings growing from 8 to 34 regular attendees representing all service branches and combat eras, whose brotherhood transcended motorcycle club boundaries to include military loyalty. Rex became Red Rock's unofficial mascot, his presence reminding staff and patrons that service dogs perform essential medical functions for disabled veterans who'd sacrificed physical capability defending American constitutional freedoms that civilian businesses often took for granted. The table where Mike was humiliated now bears plaque reading, "Reserved for America's Heroes, all veterans. Welcome service dogs. Honored discrimination never tolerated. Brotherhood forever." Road Captain Martinez established mentorship programs connecting disabled veterans with motorcycle clubs, providing transportation advocacy and brotherhood that bridged military service with civilian community support networks that government programs couldn't effectively provide through bureaucratic channels. The Rodriguez precedent revolutionized disability accommodation in American hospitality industries through federal oversight monitoring civil rights compliance in veteran-related commercial discrimination cases that had previously gone unchallenged by isolated individuals lacking community support. Mike addressed restaurant management conferences monthly. Disabled veterans didn't sacrifice overseas to be humiliated in American businesses where their service dogs are medical equipment enabling independence rather than inconvenience. The National Restaurant Association developed comprehensive training protocols recognizing service-connected disabilities, proper service dog accommodation, and federal legal protections governing veteran business interactions that protected establishments while serving military communities appropriately. Federal funding supported accessibility improvements in hospitality establishments nationwide, ensuring disabled veterans could participate fully in civilian commercial activities without facing discrimination disguised as policy enforcement or health code compliance that violated federal accommodation requirements. Corporate insurance policies now include civil rights violation coverage, making discrimination financially unsustainable while encouraging inclusive business practices serving disabled veteran communities whose patronage generated positive publicity and increased revenue. Mike Rodriguez discovered that his Marine sacrifice, once mocked through commercial discrimination, became foundation for protecting thousands of disabled veterans facing similar treatment in civilian establishments where their service deserved honor rather than humiliation. His advocacy work helped hospitality businesses understand that veteran accommodation generated community support and increased profitability, while serving populations whose sacrifice had protected American commercial freedoms from foreign threats that would have destroyed civilian business operations. Red Rock Steakhouse became his headquarters for veteran advocacy and community outreach, demonstrating that disabled veterans deserved respect equal to their military sacrifice, while providing social integration opportunities that government programs couldn't replicate through institutional services. The Red Rock incident proved that veteran brotherhood transcends service periods, extending into civilian communities where former military personnel defend disabled brothers against systematic discrimination with same intensity shown protecting America overseas. Mike learned that courage required for military service was equally necessary for civilian justice, standing against institutional bias, even when facing commercial authority and social prejudice. Honor earned through military sacrifice cannot be diminished by civilian discrimination. When veteran communities unite, they defend disabled brothers with same ferocity shown defending America against foreign enemies. In the end, Mike Rodriguez learned that the same Marines who would have died for him in Ramadi were equally prepared to defend him in American restaurants. The battlefield changed, but brotherhood remained eternal.